Okay, so we're diving deep into deep conversations here with Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff. This isn't the Let's Talk About the Weather or the small talk show. This is the deep show with the deep conversations about the deep big topics. And I'm your host Sean Neese or Sean K or whatever you want to call me as. And I have my guest today is journalist for Patch and also religious scholar Sarah Salvadore.
Hi, Sean.
And
It's nice to be on your show.
yeah, and she was my roommate a long time ago too. And
That's right.
yeah, and she also and in today we were going to talk about like the different religions, like the religious makeup in India, and also the religious conflict is there as well. And you're originally from India,
That's correct.
and you come from a Catholic family there. I know that like there's not a lot of Catholics in India, right? So that's like
That's correct.
yeah. And so I guess to start off, I wanted to get into how like what your experience was like. I guess like growing up there and like how that led you to like being a religious like interested in like different religions and being a religious scholar.
So I grew up in India. Uh, my family's Catholic, and they are quite devout. So we grew up in the church community, being part of the church. But at the same time, because you live in India and there are so many other religions there, it's very hard to isolate yourself. So we also grew up knowing about different religions, being friends with people who come from different faiths. And we always celebrated every festival, whether it's the Hindu festival, it's a Muslim festival, or the Sikh festivals. Everybody celebrated them together because we had neighbors who would invite us over and we would participate as well. So that gave us an understanding of what different religions existed in India, and the faith that people had. And I think when you are a minority community in a country, there is no way you can escape what the majority religion is all about. And people in India are generally very welcoming. So, in all their festivals and celebrations, they would always invite us. So growing up, it was just so harmonious for all of us. And I think that kind of gave me an interest later in life to kind of delve into religion further, to kind of understand where people derive their faith from. And that's how, I got interested in religious studies.
Yeah, and it's also so it's like it's mainly Hindu's the main religion there, and then there's like different sects of Hinduism as well, or is there like more? Because you said that everybody was like welcoming, and is there like more? Is there like a more conservative? I guess there's like a more conservative sect of Hinduism that's more, and there's like a less, and is there like a more open? Like, is there like a? Is that how does it go that way or like?
It's very difficult to describe Hinduism, and especially when you're kind of comparing it to other religions, because it's more like a philosophy. It's more like Buddhism. And yes, there are different sects of Hinduism. There are the Vaishnavites, the Shaivites, etc. But the core of the faith remains the same. Whether their theology doesn't change with different sects, etc. It's just that they worship the divine in different ways. Having said that, I think Hinduism occupies a space where there is room for other religions to thrive as well. Hindus also consider the Buddha to be the avatar of the god Vishnu, even though the Buddhists don't claim that. But it just shows that there is a space where you can kind of absorb other things, and you can grow harmoniously. So Hinduism is it's a little difficult to describe because it's more of a philosophy in that sense.
Yeah, well, I appreciate a lot of concepts of Hinduism, like from I guess like an allegorical perspective. That's kind of how I look at all religions in a way, is like an
Mm-hmm.
allegory. I actually kind of gravitated more towards the Eastern, like Buddhism, Hinduism, than I mean, I tried different things when I was younger, like the like synagogue and like church and like different, but like more like the Eastern, like Hinduism, concepts of Hinduism and Buddhism and Taoism kind of like resonate with me more.
Yeah.
But like with Hinduism, there's the Upanishads talks about the Atman, which is kind of like the self beyond the self, and that's kind of like similar to Buddhism, like talk about enlightenment and everything, and also like the deities I think can kind of represent like different aspects of like that are within us or like within human consciousness in a way. Like
Right.
Ganesh is like remover of obstacles. It could be like
True.
removing the obstacles within yourself, kind of. So basically, Buddhism broke out of Hinduism, as we were saying, and there's
I wouldn't
in a
say
way.
they broke out of Hinduism. It's a very, very original concept. And I think that's where people get confused. They think that, Buddhism is very similar to Hinduism, but it's not. It's very unique in their outlook, in the philosophy, in their theology. Yes, Siddhartha did come from, like a Hindu family maybe, but his ideas, his thoughts were very, very original, very different from what Hinduism was at that time. Whether it was the caste system, whether it was how women were treated, etc. Buddhism was very different. So in that sense, they are not similar, and they've never been similar. Even though people believe that it's similar and that it came from Hinduism, there are terms that Buddhism uses which are very similar to Hinduism, but the concepts and the ideas behind that are very original and different.
Yeah, I guess it was just the original Buddha Siddhartha. He was a Hindu that he was raised Hindu and everything, but then he kind of found his own religion in a way. But it's hard to, in a lot of ways, Buddhism isn't really a religion; it's more of a philosophy. Because
Buddhism has never been about religion, because religion means there's a belief in a god and you have to worship somebody, but this concept doesn't exist there.
Yeah, well, that's why a lot of atheists. There's even atheists who say like they appreciate Buddhism or they're drawn to, because it's non-dogmatic. It's more, but it's still. Well, in my perspective, I think you could interpret a lot of religions as kind of like nirvana, or like the divine being something within you. Like even in Christianity, it says like, oh, the kingdom of heaven is within you. And I think that's what the Buddha was talking about, was just like reaching that higher state. And like I said earlier about like the Atman in Hinduism, it's kind of like the self beyond the self. Like I think that's what Buddha was kind of tapping into.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said earlier, the core of all religions and all faith is to rise above yourself, to gain that consciousness that allows you to become one with the divine being, if your belief is in the divine being.
So how did it vary, like, between different places you traveled in India, like with the different sects? Was there like of Hinduism and with other religious groups, like, but I guess specifically Hinduism, because I know it varies like by there's like various different sects, right? And I believe some focus more on one deity more than another.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So where I was born and raised in the East, they worship the goddess Durga a lot. So there's a 9-day festival where they celebrate the goddess Durga. They celebrate her victory in the battle against this demon god called Mahishasur. So the goddess Durga goes to battle against evil. So that's those 9 days and the 6 days. So that's what is celebrated in the East in a very big way. And so the goddess is celebrated a lot in the East from where I come, and that is a big thing. Then probably in the West and in many North Indian states, they celebrate Diwali, which is a celebration of the goddess Lakshmi, which is the goddess of wealth and prosperity. And I think it also stems from the fact that many of them are merchants and vendors and everything, right? And then more towards the south, as you go down, there's more devotion towards the god Shiva, at least, and the god Vishnu, the Vishnu's various avatars, and then Shiva. So that's the difference, and the celebrations also revolve around that.
And also, I think sometimes the different gods are avatars
Yes.
are like different forms of the other
Yes.
gods. Because I know, like Kali specifically, like I think she was I know that there's different views on her. I think one is like she's the more aggressive side of Shiva, but there's been different views on who Kali is, and I know too. Like, and also, I think Krishna is also like an avatar of
Yes.
Vishnu.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. Krishna is also an avatar of Vishnu. Again, he's worshipped a lot by the people in the East, in states like Gujarat, etc. And even in that sphere, and there are different sects that worship the different kinds of not avatars, but the different versions of Krishna. Some celebrate or worship the baby Krishna form. Some celebrate and worship the Krishna which is from the Mahabharata. So it varies.
And has there ever been tension between the different sects of Hinduism, like what they believe, or has there ever been fighting?
Not anymore. It must have happened like centuries ago, very, very, very earlier between the Vaishnavites and the Shaivites, but not anymore, no.
But I know Gandhi was trying to stop, because I think that there was tension between Muslims in India and like Hindus, and then Gandhi was trying to. I remember that was one thing he was trying to solve, and then it split into
Yes, so from what we always learned in school and everything was always that we were a colonial nation. So for the longest time, what the East India Company did was that they believed in the motto of divide and rule. Because if it's easier to divide people, it'll be much more convenient to rule over them. So what they would do is they would cause problems between the Hindus and the Muslims so that it's easier for them to control the masses, to control the land. So one of the ways for India to gain independence that Gandhi realized was to bring people together, irrespective of their faiths and irrespective of what they believed or who they believed in. And that's what he tried to do a lot, bring everybody together and then fight for a common goal, which was independence. So I think that's what you're referring to. Like he tried to bring Hindus and Muslims together. Of course, there was a large population of Muslims that were more comfortable with their own country and having their own space. And that's why they chose to have Pakistan, which was earlier a part of India. So when India gained independence, Pakistan was also formed.
So I guess you're saying that they got along before the British came along, and that kind of used that as a way to divide them. They tried to. Yeah, I know that's been a common tactic. That even happened like here with indentured servants in America when they first came over. Like there was a there was like a working class unity of like different races, and then they used racism to divide like Bacon's Rebellion, that was like a thing here in the U.S.
Yes.
But like that's like a common thing they do, to is like pin
I,
people against
you
each
know,
other. So yeah,
when people live together, uh, there's always some kind of, kind of a conflict, not deep rooted, but there's always something there, right? So I wouldn't say India was always conflict free and came to religion, because uh, Indians had rulers that came from Muslim countries, and when Islam came in, there was a little bit of there was conflict, because many kings had taxed the Hindus when they wanted to go out on a pilgrimage and stuff like that. So it wasn't fair in so many ways. And then there was in many parts there were destructions of temples, etc., for to build more mosques, because some Muslim rulers were very Islamic in the way they looked at people. Some were not. The later ones who came, for example, the Emperor Akbar, he realized that religious harmony was very important if he wanted to rule over the vast land of the country. So there has always been some kind of a push and pull between faiths, but it was never that bad, and I think that's this very push and pull that happens. Even if you're living with your family, you always have disagreements, right? So it's something like
Yep.
that. So I think when the East India Company came, that's something they tried to exploit.
And when you were talking about, so you were talking about like other nations that would come and invade India. So was that like the Ottoman Empire, or who was it?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
They came. Genghis Khan came. The
Right.
Mongols. The Genghis Khan was there. So the north of India, if you look at the map of India, it's connected all the way across Asia, right? And in those days, when there were no boundaries for countries, when there was no existence of a United Nation or something like that, invaders always came into some land, right? And you had to cross rivers and mountains, and it depended on the ambition of the emperors or the kings at that point. Even Alexander the Great came all the way to India, right, from Greece.
Yeah.
So if you look at the map of India and you see the northern side, you'll realize that it was conquered so many times, and so many invaders went through that land that we became so used to seeing people of other faiths, and I think people learned to exist in that kind of a turmoil very early on.
So they got used to like the different beliefs being there, different ways of thinking. Yeah. And then it got worse later, because you were talking, I know you posted on Facebook a bit about the current leader, Modi, and like, I guess there's a right wing in India. Is that more like Hindu nationalist? They only want it to be Hindu?
Yes. So that's the difference there's a huge difference between Hinduism and Hindutva. So Hindutva is what Modi and the right wing, government and his right wing government follow, and their philosophies is nothing. When you compare it to Hinduism, they have nothing similar to it. They believe that India has to be a Hindu land, whereas India has always been a secular nation. Because, like I said, we've had a history of having people of different faiths coming in. So I think that's what they're trying to do, like kind of change the fabric of society, change the fabric or the nature of the nation in itself.
Do you know is there like a history of where that originated, like his group, like, that thinks that way?
I think, if I'm not wrong, I think they came into prominence, I think, more in the 1920s with the RSS. There's a group called RSS, I think they came into prominence around that time. They had their leaders, but they were never in league, or they were never close to what Gandhi and Nehru and the other leaders had wanted for the country. So it was taking root around that time.
So what do you think pushed people to go to? Was it like economic reasons that they were more driven to his group now, or what was it? Was it just like anger at things going on, or what was?
It's very complicated. If you tell somebody, if you try to drill it into them, that they are victims and they are being persecuted for their faith, many people will buy it, right? And I think we've seen the same thing here in the United States a few years ago, right? People believed that they are the victims, even though they were the majority of the country. So it's something like
This is
that.
the war on Christmas that Fox News always talks about. Like,
very similar, extremely similar concepts, where they've been told, oh, as Hindus, you've been persecuted. You're not allowed to celebrate your festivals. You're not allowed to do this, or you're not allowed to do worship, things like that. Whereas it wasn't true. It's just that when you look at it, that I think they looked at other faiths having the freedom as them not having the same. You know what I'm saying? It's like, if you have rights, if somebody else has rights, that means they're taking away that right from me to give it to them. I think that's what people feel a lot. So it got into their heads that, okay, we are the victims. And then if you notice, in Modi and his government, they'll always talk about the invaders from the 1500s, the Muslim invaders that we had from 1500s. They're like, oh, when the Mughals came 500 years ago, this is what they did to you, So I think they're trying to rake up something that happened so long ago, and people have moved on and kind of, built this whole fabric of democracy. But when you're poor, then there are economic conditions that you can't overcome, when there is a lack of education, it's very easy for you to fall into that trap. And I think that's what has essentially happened. And it's a little sad to see it happen that way, because, you grew up with people who always believed, you believed that, everybody needs to be valued. And all of a sudden they subscribe to this kind of ideology. So it's a little disconcerting in a way. So I think that's what kind of pushed them more towards, the ideology of Hindutva.
And did anybody in your family, or did you face any kind of tension with people who subscribe to that for being Catholic, since it wasn't Hindu, or they thought you should be Hindu, or they thought your family should be Hindu?
No. We never had that problem so far. Nobody ever told us that, you got to be Hindu or something like that. That's never happened to us, no.
But do they do it like with other, like, I don't know how large the Catholic, you said it's a very small community, like
it's
Catholic.
very small. Yeah. We're very small.
So it's mainly towards Islam, or is that the main thing?
I think the main tension in the country is between Hindus and the Muslims.
Yeah.
Because after the Hindus, the next biggest population is of the Muslims. Christianity is really small. It's like 2% or something.
And if someone's an atheist, they don't have much trouble? Or?
No, they don't. Yeah.
But so it's mainly that. It's mainly those two.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And I know the caste system is another thing that kind of formed out of Hinduism in a way. Like, is there anything you can say about that? Like, and what do you know about that?
So the caste system kind of, It's kind of a segregation of people based on their jobs or what they do. Like this, the scholars and the educators are the highest caste. Then comes, the warrior caste, the kings and the rulers. Then came the traders. And then came people who did manual labor, laborers, people who would be, I don't know, sweepers and things like that. And over time, they began to look down on people who were from the lower castes. So what happened is that privilege resided in only a few, the upper castes, whereas the lower caste have been kind of dominated for the longest time. So what happened later on in India is that the government tried to do something called reservation, which is like affirmative action in the United States. It is quite similar, where a certain amount of educational seats, certain amount of government jobs would be reserved for the people of the lower caste because they have been marginalized for centuries. So the government tried to bring them out of that and, have them, give them the opportunities that they've been denied for centuries. So right now what's happening is, caste system still prevails in India and it's deep rooted. That's something you cannot take away from Indians. It's very, very deep rooted. But I see a lot of young people, young scholars, especially from who come from the considered lower caste, trying to break away from it, trying to bring awareness to what their people have suffered for so long and continue to suffer for the lack of education and lack of privilege that the other upper castes have.
So how did they fall into those caste systems in the first place? Was it just like you're saying that? Was it just like their ancestors were?
Yes, It's just that, and for thousands of years, it just continued. It didn't break. That system. It never broke. And even now, it's very difficult to break that system. So even when it comes to marriages and stuff like that, they'll always look for people within your own caste. If somebody wants to marry if a boy wants to marry a girl below his caste, there'll always be issues from the family. There will be always issues from the community. It's not as easy, and it's not easy. You always have to face that societal pressure because it still exists. It's so ingrained in India that it's very difficult to break. So that's what it is. Even though it started off as something, as categorizing people over time, because we've had thousands and thousands of years of practice, right? So it's very difficult to get people to break away from it.
So is there any part of the religious text that justifies that, or was that more of a political move, the caste system?
No, it wasn't a political move. There are texts, like in the Manusmriti, there is a text that kind of justifies it. I haven't read the Manusmriti, though, but I have seen parts of the text, and I know some religious scholars talk about it, and my ideas are based on other religious scholars and what they say. So it does exist in some texts in Indian concept where they justify the existence of the caste system, and it's not political.
And I guess, so once you're in one caste, you can't work, you're stuck economically. You can't get a better job. You can't. So it's kind of like how nobility, it used to be like the name, or there used to be kind of a thing. I think it's still kind of a thing, but there used to be like the noble, if you're born to a certain name, that was like an old thing always.
Yes. Yeah. It's like what the people of color face in this country. If you're Black, you are at a disadvantage from the time you're born, right? Whether it comes to housing, education, jobs. It's so difficult to break away from it. It's so difficult to kind of get out of that for many people. But if you're white, it's fairly easy for you. So it's very similar in the caste system. But you have to remember that India is this practice in India has been around for thousands of years. So it's equally difficult. So when you're born, you can't break away from the caste system. It is in there. Your traditions revolve around it. Your culture revolves around it. So over here, for example, in the United States, you could still move out of it with education, with a little bit of support from the government, etc. But in India, you cannot. You're born into it, and hence you stay there.
And is that belief come from the reincarnation, like the karma? Is that where it comes from? Like that you're in this caste because of karma from past lives? Is that
one of the reasons? Yes, it could be. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know also, do all of them? Oh yeah, reincarnation. I know is another thing in Hinduism, but also like Buddhism. But like I don't know. I don't think all Buddhists believe in reincarnation. I think that's only certain Buddhists. Like, because you said, it can also be taken in like a secular way too, depending on how you interpret. Yeah.
They do believe, in general, they do believe in reincarnation, but the concepts could be quite different from what Hindus would, think of reincarnation. So, like I said, it's Hinduism and Buddhism, though they sound similar, they're absolutely not. So even with Hinduism, for example, in Buddhism, they regard rebirth as a flow of life, from one to another, right? Whereas in Hinduism, they believe that the soul is changing your body. It inhibits. So I think that's one of the examples. It's as a concept, it may be similar, but it's not similar in the way they believe in it or where they practice it.
So Buddhism is more like you live on in another. It's more, I guess. It's not as like you reincarnate. You get reincarnated. Does it have the same, or does it in India? Does it have the same ideas of karma in it at all, or not?
Yeah,
is that more?
Karma is. I think everybody who's lived in India, irrespective of what religion, faith, you do believe in karma. So that holds true for everyone. Yes.
No.
Yeah.
But you're saying that the reincarnation with Hinduism is more like...
And, reincarnation is a really, really complicated concept. It's very, very complicated because, reincarnation and rebirth, it's two different concepts. The Buddhists believe in rebirth and they believe in reincarnation. But like I said, there's a huge explanations in the texts in Hinduism and in Buddhism that kind of, when you read them, you'll realize that they're so different from each other.
And what did you, when you traveled outside India, like what was the main difference you noticed, like between the way it is with India and like other countries as far as like religion and everything else?
I just think just the one thing that strikes me a lot is the absence of celebrations of other faiths. Like in India, whether it's a Hindu festival, it's a Muslim festival, it's a Christian festival, or Sikh festival, Buddhist festival, you get holidays, and the country, everybody celebrates in their own way. But here it's different, it's only, you see people celebrating like Christmas or Easter or Halloween. you don't see mass celebration or public celebration of other faiths, whether it's the stores, whether it's the malls or whatever, or in people. You don't see that. So I think that's one of the main differences that you notice.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's like, but then they also have like the different festivals for like the different Hindu deities too, right? Like I know that there's
Yes,
the
they
Ganesh,
do.
and the different,
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot more celebrations probably in India too. I
There is
guess
a
like a
lot.
lot more
Yes,
different,
yes.
But and there's also Sikhism is probably, and I don't know, Jainism or like the other
Yes.
two we didn't. So Sikhism and Jainism, I know, also really they're relatively common in India, right? And
They
also,
are. Yes, they are.
yeah. And I
Um,
know Sikhism is also connected to, I mean, Hinduism in a way, or like it's a different. I know it's its own
again,
religion, but yeah,
yeah, again, they're very different. Their belief is very different. Their belief system is very different. I have never studied Sikhism. I know that they have the gurus. They have Guru Gobind Singh, Guru Angad Singh. They have different gurus who they follow, and their holy book is the Guru Granth Sahib, which if you go to Sikh temple, that's what is there. The book, the holy book, and you'll see them treating the holy book as something so sacred. That it has an altar around it. And Jainism again comes from Mahavir, again centuries old, really old. And again, I have not studied much about Jainism, but I know that there are Jains in India. Of course, the population is very small, not as large as the Hindus or the Buddhists or others.
yeah. Well, it seems like Buddhism changed more, like it had more different like sects of it, like when it
Yes.
left India. Because like because I feel like when I said like
They
not all
weren't,
believe,
I wouldn't call them sects. I would call them tradition.
like Zen, and because I feel like
Gulepa.
there's other forms of Buddhism that like are more secular, like even like atheists, like they don't really believe in like it's more about
Yeah,
just being in the present, kind of like
Buddhism
Zen. But I
is
think that's
that.
more when it left India.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Buddhism is that they never believed in, in that. But I think they have different sects, like when it left India. And those different sects kind of developed their own philosophy and theology, which kind of differs, but the core belief, the core philosophy and the doctrine remains the same.
yeah, and I think a lot of people don't know it originated in India too, because like I said, because like the original Buddha isn't usually the Buddha you see; it's usually the guy the one who came later. I think, yeah.
There is always one. There is only one Buddha,
Yeah.
and Buddhists don't believe in that there is any kind of deity or God.
Yeah.
However, they believe that there are these forces that can help or prevent people in their path to enlightenment. And that's what Gautama Buddha actually taught people. Yeah.
Yeah. But like a lot of people in the West usually look at the laughing Buddha, like who came later, who wasn't like the Buddha himself. The Buddha
Yeah.
was from India, and he looked totally different than the laughing, but the heavy
Even
set.
the concept of the laughing Buddha also was, I remember it came into India quite late. I think towards in the 90s, we started seeing these figures of the laughing Buddha. And I think it came from, China or Japan. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
And
He was someone who lived hundreds of years. He was a Buddhist, though, right? I believe, but
I really
he lived
don't
hundreds
know
of years.
whether,
So,
I'm not sure whether the laughing Buddha kind of was a real person or like the Buddha himself. But like I said, it just came into this concept came into India in the 90s, and that's when we were introduced to it. When you see these figures, etc., It's called the
How did
Buddha.
people react to that? How did people react to that though? Were they angry at that in a way? Like, this isn't the real Buddha. This isn't the original. This isn't
No,
Siddhartha
no,
Gautama.
no. I think everybody likes to see that figure of a jolly Buddha with a
Yeah.
pot belly, and people were told that the laughing Buddha brings health and happiness to your home. So a lot of people who I know, even Christians and Sikhs and my friends, would have a figure of the laughing Buddha at home because it's cute.
Yeah.
They claim that he lived, some centuries ago in some dynasty in China. But like I said, Indian Buddhism, we didn't know so much about that because it comes from a different sect of Buddhism altogether.
Yeah, because he was a prince in India, and then like he gave up all his possessions. He gave up all that to pursue and
Yeah.
But that's also kind of similar to Jesus in a way, because I know he was a carpenter, and then he gave up his life. There's like a lot of similarities with Jesus and Buddha.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yeah. I think all holy men kind of give up their worldly possessions in search of the truth, in search of nirvana or enlightenment. And I think that's where it's common. Yeah.
It's about finding a more permanent salvation, or like a permanent kind of peace, or rather than in external things or things that are temporary.
Yeah. And I think going back to a question of the laughing Buddha, if I remember correctly, it came from the Chan Buddhist monks, which is a different sect. And I think it became popular with all these figurines, etc. But like I said, in India, we only recognize the Buddha, Gautama, Siddhartha, and that, that for us, he's that. And his philosophies is again something that Indians also follow. And now in India, the other sect is the Dalai Lama's sect of Buddhism that's there. So, like I said, all holy, and coming back to what we were talking about, all holy men kind of want to leave worldly possessions behind in search of the truth. So that's something that could be common for many.
Yeah. And what would you like to see for the future of India?
I would like to see it go back to how it was earlier, to the times when we were growing up, where there was so much harmony and so much love between people. And I firmly believe that, religion is so private. It's something very personal, that it should not come in the way of how you treat people or how you go about your life. Yes, you can use religion as a means to do good, to be a better person, so you can treat people better. But it shouldn't be a cause for you to make policies, to make changes in the way you look at your people. So that's what I want.
Yeah, and I think if like you're trying to force someone to your religion, like that's like, oh, I'm trying to force my truth on your truth, but like everybody has their own way of seeing the world, and it's just like, I'm forcing you to be like, that's not gonna, and then that's not gonna be real. That spirituality or that religion is not gonna be real for them, because it was just something that was like forced on them.
Yes,
so it's more like that's what I thought of when you said like it's a very personal thing, like because it's like it relates to how you see the world, how you were raised, or like what your perspective, like it's very unique for everybody.
When you don't let religion color your view, you see people as they are, as another human being, just like you, struggling to make their way in life, having the same issues, unless they're privileged. But if you look at people through the lens of religion, you'll see so many differences. And when you see those differences, you if you're a strong person, if you are a true believer, you would accept them, because that's what religion teaches you, right? But if you're not, you'll just see the difference as a means to stay away from them or create this divide.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is so dangerous these days, especially when you have a government that believes in a strong Hindutva policy. Because what you're doing is essentially creating a bigger divide among people.
Yeah, it's about seeing what we have in common, but also respecting the differences and
Yeah.
that
And
too.
I don't like this word tolerant. As people say, you should be tolerant towards other religions. When you say tolerant, it gives you a sense that, oh, I'm just tolerating you because, I'm supposed to. But I would rather have them, I'd rather use more terms, people use more terms like acceptance. Because when you accept without any kind of strings attached, hopefully. It's not like I'll accept you as if you're a Muslim if you do X, Y, Z or something like that. But the word tolerance and intolerance it just doesn't sit right with me.
Yeah, well, because tolerate's like, oh yeah, we work together, so we have to get along. But
yeah, we're just going to get along.
I don't really like you. Yeah, it's not like really
I
trying
don't really
to understand
like
them.
you. I don't really care for you. I don't care what you believe in. But because we are put in this situation, let's just try and get along. But don't expect much from me. That's what I get from the feeling. But when you say acceptance, it means a whole lot different. And it's more positive in its way. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that's a good note to end on, but I don't know if you have any final thoughts or things you'd like to say.
I think religion is such a topic that it needs, even if you study it for years, it's still words are inadequate to kind of express how different they are or how similar they are. Because there's always something new to discover. But I think the core of everything, of every faith, is that you love people, you accept them for who you are, and practice your faith, be a good person. So that's what I think it is.
Yeah. Well, I guess even without maybe that's something people can learn, even if they're they don't believe in any kind of faith too. They could find their own way of it's just a good thing people should practice. I'm trying to include atheists in the conversation too.
Of course. I don't know why we shouldn't include them too. They don't believe in any God, which is fine for them. I know people who are agnostic in my family. I know people who are atheist in my family, and it's fine. It's their belief. But that doesn't stop me from loving them for who they are and what they believe in. And that doesn't stop them from respecting the other family members for their faith or loving them as such.
Yeah, it's something you can find if you find in your religion, that's good. If you find it outside, it's just a good thing for people to follow. Treat each other as you want to be treated.
Yeah,
and that kind of thing. Yeah,
the core of it is the same, right? It's just the doctrines and the theology might be different. Theology is different when it comes to different sects and religions as well. So, yeah.
All right. Well, it was good to talk to you. Thanks for coming on and having this thoughtful.
No problem. It's always great to speak with you. Like I said, there's not enough time to actually delve into everything in such detail, but it's good to have a conversation nevertheless.
Yeah, I think this got people a good outline of everything, and then